It's always fascinating where you stumble upon insights that can actually shift how you see things, isn't it? Sometimes you're looking for them, other times they just pop up.
They really do.
Welcome to the deep dive. We basically sift through different conversations, different sources, to pull out the stuff that's genuinely useful, maybe a bit thought-provoking for you.
Exactly. And today, wow, you've pulled together a really diverse set of discussions. We're talking space travel, comedy, politics, tech. It's all in there.
It's quite a mix.
It is. And the idea is to find that practical wisdom hidden inside all of it, stuff you might actually be able to use day to day.
Yeah, think of it like a bit of an intellectual treasure hunt. The clues are, hidden in these seemingly unrelated chats, but the real prize, maybe a fresh perspective, maybe a new way to tackle something. So let's dive in.
Let's do it. So the conversation we're digging into kicks off with female astronauts. And what jumps out almost immediately is how their paths to space weren't always the same as the guys.
Right. Not always the standard military pilot background that, many male astronauts had.
Exactly. And that right there feels like the first takeaway.
Yeah. How so?
Well, it suggests that success, in whatever field, rarely follows just one single path. There are loads of ways to get where you want to go.
Multiple roads. And we should value that diversity in the journey.
Absolutely. Someone taking an unconventional route doesn't make their achievement less valid. If anything, it often shows more ingenuity, maybe more resilience.
That makes sense. And resilience. There was that mention, wasn't there, about an astronaut rescued by Musk from a space station? Pretty dramatic.
Super dramatic example, yeah. But even that, it kind of points to something practical. Even when things look incredibly tough, help or solutions can just appear from places you'd never expect.
So stay open to possibilities, maybe? Don't assume help comes only from the usual channel.
Precisely. Don't limit your expectations.
Okay, now, shifting gears pretty dramatically. The conversation gets into this interesting view on failure. Almost like wanting a rocket to fail. That sounds weird.
It does sound counterintuitive, doesn't it? But the idea is about understanding the absolute limits. Sometimes pushing until something breaks is how you find out where that limit truly is.
Okay, I can see that in engineering. But how does that apply more broadly?
Well, think about it in personal life or work. Embracing setbacks, not avoiding them, but seeing them as like crucial data points, that's often where the real learning and innovation happens.
So analyzing why something failed is maybe more valuable than just succeeding easily.
Often, yeah. It's stress testing not just a machine, but maybe your own ideas, your assumptions. It's not about seeking failure, obviously.
Right, not aiming for it.
No, but extracting the absolute maximum learning when things inevitably do go wrong.
Okay, got it. Then the discussion moves to spaceship hatches. That seems specific.
It is, but it's a neat illustration of physics in action. The reason they open outward is because of the huge pressure difference. Space is a vacuum, right?
Right. No pressure outside, lots inside.
Exactly. So that vacuum is basically pulling the hatch outwards, really powerfully. The outward opening design uses that force to create an even tighter seal. It's clever.
That is clever. And then there was that slightly odd story about the UFO blueprint.
Oh, yeah. The wealthy guy with the supposed 1950s UFO plan, with the submarine-style crank handle for the hatch.
A crank handle? Seems a bit, low-tech for a UFO.
Definitely. It sounds almost comical. But even that anecdote, contrasted with the real hatch physics, makes a point.
Which is?
Understanding fundamental principles like pressure differentials can lead to really smart solutions. The space hatch uses physics brilliantly. Maybe even that slightly dodgy UFO blueprint reminds us to look for those core principles in whatever problem we're facing. What are the underlying forces at play?
So even the weird stuff can point back to something useful. Okay. Then things get into government transparency, or the lack of it, mentioning billions, sort of. Yeah, unaccounted for.
Yeah, and that touches on a really vital point about accountability, not just in government, but any organization, any system, really.
A lack of transparency can hide problems.
It absolutely can. It hinders effective problem solving, so it sort of encourages a healthy skepticism, the value of asking tough questions wherever you are.
Which actually links pretty well to the next bit about unfiltered communication. The popularity of shows or podcasts where guests aren't heavily edited.
Right. There seems to be this real hunger for authenticity, for hearing people directly, like warts and all, you could say.
Instead of the super polished PR version.
Exactly. In a world full of carefully crafted messages, people seem to value that raw, direct input. It suggests that maybe in our own lives, being more direct and honest, even if it's less polished, might actually build stronger connections.
That's a good point. Sometimes the most effective message isn't the most refined one. Okay, but then the conversation dives into the tricky stuff. Information overload, bias.
Yeah, and this is so relevant today, isn't it? Dealing with the sheer amount of information and figuring out the biases baked into it.
The discussion mentioned media bias and also that tendency people have to accuse others of exactly what they're doing themselves.
That projection thing, yeah. And the COVID vaccine example came up, showing how our own strong beliefs can completely color how we see information, no matter where it comes from.
It really hammers home how important critical thinking is. We need to constantly question what we're seeing and, crucially, question our own biases, too.
And the general distrust mentioned towards both government and big tech companies, it just fuels that need for independent thought, for informed skepticism. You can't just blindly accept things.
No, definitely not. Okay, shifting again. The idea of fame. Why people chase it, especially maybe people who don't, quote-unquote, need it, like wealthy individuals or their kids going into stand-up or reality TV.
It's an interesting phenomenon. It makes you wonder about the motivation. Is it just the allure of attention in our social media age? Or is it searching for something else?
Like validation. Meaning, it does make you question if chasing that external approval actually leads to fulfillment, compared to other pursuits, maybe.
That's a really good question to ask. What's really driving that desire? And contrasting that perceived glamour, the conversation then brings up the importance of just showing up, doing the work.
Using social media figures as an example, right?
Right.
The ones who are successful often just produce a ton of content consistently.
It seems obvious, but it's a universal principle. Doesn't matter if it's building an online brand, learning an instrument, or running a business. Consistent effort, dedication, that's the bedrock. No real shortcuts.
It's going to put the hours in.
Pretty much. Now, this leads into a really significant topic, the impact of technology, especially social media, on young people.
Yeah, this part was quite concerning. The links suggested between early smartphone and social media use and rising issues like eating disorders, self-harm, even suicidal thoughts among kids and teens.
It's deeply troubling stuff. And the personal anecdote shared in the source about someone feeling genuinely better after cutting back on social media, that really hits home, even if it's just one person's experience.
It does. It makes you reflect on your own relationship with it all.
Yeah.
How is this constant connection affecting my well-being, even subtly?
Exactly. And hearing about people like, say, Woody Harrelson or Bill Murray who deliberately limit their tech use, it offers a different model, doesn't it, in this hyper-connected world?
It really does. Maybe consciously stepping back from the digital noise is actually vital for mental health.
It seems increasingly likely for many people. Then, briefly, the conversation touches on just the sheer speed of tech innovation. AI, quantum computing, it's mind-boggling.
The analogy used was the Wright brothers to nuclear bombs, showing how fast and unpredictably things can escalate.
Yeah, it puts our current moment in perspective. We're living through this period of incredibly rapid, potentially world-altering change. And frankly, we don't know where it's all headed.
A bit exciting, a bit terrifying.
Both, I think. But underlying it all is that constant human drive, to innovate, to make better stuff, as the source put it.
Right. Okay, another shift. Ward tourism, that concept.
Yeah, and the interesting point was how different people react to experiencing conflict zones. Some come back with very simplified black and white views.
Like this side good, that side bad.
Exactly. While others develop a much more complex, nuanced understanding, maybe more questions than answers.
So direct experience doesn't automatically guarantee deeper insight.
Apparently not. Our own biases, how we process things, that all plays a huge role. It's a reminder to approach complex issues with a bit of humility, maybe. Recognize our own perspective is limited.
Good point. There was also a brief mention of, hidden forces. Parallel governments, powerful people behind the scenes.
Yeah, just acknowledging that maybe not everything is as it seems on the surface. There can be complex dynamics, unseen influences shaping events. It taps into that feeling of uncertainty.
Definitely. Then a darker turn, talking about serial killers. Are people born evil?
The discussion touched on that, suggesting potential links to really damaging childhood experiences, psychotic parents, animal cruelty early on.
So that complex mix of nature and nurture again, highlighting how profoundly early life can shape behavior, even in the most extreme ways.
It's a heavy topic, but it speaks to those deep questions about human nature.
Okay, back to something more immediately practical. Getting lost in the wilderness.
Right. Anecdotes about people disappearing in national parks. The clear takeaway there is just be prepared.
Seriously prepared. GPS, compass, map, knowing how to use them.
Absolutely. Respecting nature means being aware of the risks and taking precautions. Simple but crucial advice.
Couldn't agree more. Then, an interesting look at how things evolve, using hippie culture and marijuana growing as an example.
Yeah, how something that started as maybe a counterculture thing morphed over time into this potentially violent, big money enterprise involving cartels, especially with changing laws.
Like California making illegal growing a misdemeanor, which had unforeseen effects.
Exactly. It shows how social movements and laws can have these totally unintended consequences. What starts with one intention can end up somewhere completely different. It's complex.
And that theme of unintended consequences carries on, right? With the example of the stabbing wagon.
Yeah, the harm reduction effort that, according to the discussion, might have inadvertently encouraged or enabled more drug use in public spaces.
It's a cautionary tale, isn't it? Good intentions aren't always enough.
Definitely not. You really have to think through the potential knock-on effects of policies or actions. Rigorous evaluation is key.
Okay, and then there was that satirical comment about needing a fascist to fix California's problems, said tongue-in-cheek, obviously.
Right, clearly satire. But it taps into that real frustration people can feel when faced with complex problems that seem intractable. That desire for a drastic, simple solution.
Even if the proposed solution is obviously dangerous and undesirable in reality.
Precisely. It illustrates the temptation of simplistic answers in chaotic times without actually endorsing the answer itself.
Gotcha. And finally, the discussion touched on the media landscape shifting again. Netflix, for example, may be moving back towards broader appeal content, like the Tom Brady roast live comedy.
Yeah, it points to that constant push and pull between creators and audiences. And the success mentioned of platforms offering more diverse, maybe less censored stuff suggests people do want a wider range of voices and perspectives.
It makes sense. So, wow, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We really have. From space hatches to social media's impact, from failure to fame.
But it's amazing how these, totally separate conversations can spark insights that actually connect back to our everyday lives. Navigating careers, relationships, just understanding the world.
That was the goal, really, to pull out those underlying principles, those different ways of looking at things that you, listening, can maybe take away and think about in your own situation.
We hope this deep dive has maybe sparked a few new ideas or new ways of thinking about things you're dealing with.
Yeah, definitely reflect on the themes we touched on. Which bits resonated most with where you are right now?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And now, maybe a final thought to chew on.
Go for it.
Pick just one small insight, one little nugget from everything we talked about today, something that seemed maybe interesting or relevant, and just try, consciously, to apply it somehow in your life this week. See what happens. You might be surprised.